literally. Maybe 1,600.
Electronic
I know. The wonders of modern technology.
There's Sonia. Good morning.
Buenos días. Tenemos Telemundo.
La cámara.
It really is. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Good morning. This is Terry O'Rourke, Special Assistant Harris County Attorney, welcoming you to the 4th Annual Harris County Attorney's Tele-Town Hall on Election Code for Election Workers. Anytime you can press 0 on your phone to get in line to ask a question. You can listen to this presentation on the Internet by going to Harris County Attorney's website, and that's www.harriscountyattorney.net. If you are disconnected, you can dial toll-free 855-756-7520, extension 26259 to reconnect. Let me give you that again. If you get disconnected, dial 855-756-7520, extension 26259, and hit the pound sign to reconnect. Now you're going to hear your county attorney, Vince Ryan, who's with us today with several other officials from the Harris County government. This is Vince Ryan.
Good morning. This is Vince Ryan, your Harris County attorney, welcoming you to a presentation on advice for election workers for the 2014 election. Election day, of course, is November 4th, with early voting starting to schedule Monday, October 20th, running through October 31st, ending at 7 p.m. Our office is pleased to provide this service to you as we all work together here at Harris County to have an election that meets all legal requirements and provides our citizens with access to the polls. As the county attorney, we provide legal advice to the county clerk, who is here with us today, Stan Stannard, the tax assessor collector, voter registrar, and to the election judges and alternative judges who serve in the front lines of our elections. We thank you for your service in advance of all this work that we know is to come. We expect to have online today about 1,000 election judges and alternate election judges. In a few minutes, you will be given the opportunity to ask your questions and make comments. In the office with me is Harris County Clerk Stan Stannard. The county clerk administers county and state elections. With Mr. Stannard are Sonia Aston, who is the administrator for the election department for the county clerk's office. Also, we have J.R. Harris, who is the Director of Compliance for the Tax Assessor Collector and Voter Registrar, along with Amy Wynn, who is the Manager of Voter Registration for the Tax Assessor Collector. With us from the County Attorney's Office today, of course, is Terry O'Rourke, who has introduced himself just a moment ago, and Senior Assistant County Attorney Douglas Ray. Doug is the head of our Public Law Practice Group and leads the election law team that provides legal advice the county clerk and elections workers during the election process. Stan, would you like to say a few words, and then I would like to have Doug discuss the latest developments concerning the Texas voter ID law, including this morning's order from the United States Supreme Court. In the meantime, those who are listening, if you would like to ask a question, press 0 on your phone pad. Thank you. Stan?
Yes, well, welcome everyone. This is Stan Stannard, your Harris County Clerk and Chief Election Official. For months we've been working on this election. Training is in progress, machines have been programmed, and the day is here, Monday. We start early voting. Of course, Election Day, it takes an army across Harris County. We have almost 6,000 people on Election Day involved, and we really thank you for being involved because you are the face of elections. We're, like you right now on this phone call, we're behind the scenes. And it's you who make this happen, and so we want you to be informed in every way. about election law, about operations. So that's why we have this phone conversation with you today. So welcome.
Well, and thank you, Stan. And we've got really big news from the United States Supreme Court, and you're about to hear Doug Ray, who's going to answer a question that's already come in from Alice Smith. So go ahead.
Yes. As many of you already know from your training, last month the district court down in Corpus Christi held a trial having to do with the voter identification requirement that Texas had imposed in 2011. Now, the 2011 law provided that only 7 types of voter identification are required before a voter can be qualified to vote. Those 7 are a driver's license, a personal ID issued by DPS, an election identification certificate, a license to carry a handgun, a naturalization certificate with a photograph, a passport, or a military ID. Those 7 types. Now, the court held a trial, reached a conclusion that those requirements were too restrictive, that they violated the Constitution and they violated the Voter Rights Act, and entered an order basically enjoining Texas from using it. After that order was entered, last Tuesday, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals stayed that order, and in fact told us to go back to using the 7 types that are in the statute. The reasoning behind that was it would be too confusing for voting officials such as yourselves and for the voters to switch the requirements so close to an election. The plaintiffs in the case filed an immediate appeal with the United States Supreme Court, and they handed down an order this morning at about 5 o'clock. And that order says that the stay that the Fifth Circuit entered will stay in effect. In other words, the ID requirements that you are to use while conducting this election are to require one of the 7 types of identification: the driver's license, the personal identification, the election identification certificate, license to carry, passport, naturalization certificate with a picture, or a military ID. Just so we'll be real straight, Sonia has trained you during your training, or will train you in the next week or so, in using these types of identification, and these are the types that are to be used.
Good. So very simply, shorthand, the Texas voter ID law is the valid law that we're going to apply in this election.
It's the law that we're going to apply in this election. Now, what the appellate courts are going to do after the election is over, we don't know. But all we're concerned about at this point is that we are to use those 7 types of identification, require those 7 types of identification when the voter comes and tries to vote.
Good. Have we got Alice Smith on the line?
I
Hello,
think
Alice
I'm
Smith.
up with it. I have it now.
Okay, good. Thank you. I hope Doug Ray's answered your questions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We're going next now to Oliver Kinchin. And the question is, why is it the poll watchers have more power than precinct judges?
Well, let's just say...
Let's make sure we got Oliver on. Oliver, are you there? Hello, Oliver?
I can go ahead and answer. Oliver, and I want everybody to understand, poll watchers do not have more power than a precinct judge. The precinct judge in the poll is in charge, and is in charge of enforcing all the rules that are applicable to the polling place. Now, the rules, of course, have to be followed. So the poll watcher is entitled to the rights and duties that are dictated for a poll watcher, but they are subject to the instructions and rulings of the election judge at the polling place. Now, the election judge does not have unfettered authority. They have to follow the rules applicable to poll watchers, the same as the poll watchers themselves. But when it comes to enforcing the rules, the election judge is in charge.
Good. Oliver, through the wonders of modern technology, could you hear that?
Well, I hear that, but I have already experienced problems with the poll watchers, even though I recognize the order of the precinct judge, and I work as a coordinator, but I have had problems in the past, whereas when I tell the precinct judges certain things, they go behind your back, they call the office, and then you get a phone call back telling you that you have to abide pacify the poll watchers. Now, there are certain things that I believe that should be and it shouldn't be, but regard to the rules that have already been set up, when you work according to those rules, the poll watchers always work against that. They feel as though they have the right. In fact, they want to control the poll.
Well, let me have you. Doug Ray is going to be the guy you're going to be talking to. Doug, have you given him your cell phone yet so
Yes.
that they have this problem?
I want everybody to know that if they have run into a problem of this kind and they want to consult to understand what the rules are and what they can enforce and what they can't enforce, they can call me. They can call me at my office. That number is 713-274-5163. Let me repeat that. It's 713-274-5163, or you can call me on my cell phone. That number is 281-935-1904. That number again is 281-935-1904. And what I want you to understand is I will repeat these numbers later on. So if you didn't catch it right now, get yourself a piece of paper and a pen, and when I repeat it later on, you'll be able to write it down.
Yeah, and this is Terry O'Rourke again to remind you all that we have election teams here in the county attorney's office that work with the county clerk and with the tax assessor collector, so that if you have a problem out in your precinct, we have teams that can go out to your polling area. And let me remind you again to hit 0 if you have a question. So you're on this phone call right now. All you've got to do is hit 0 to call in here. And then if you get disconnected, dial 855-756-7520, extension 26259, and then hit the pound sign.
Now, the best thing to do is to call the judge's number at the county clerk's office and get with them, and if they feel like we need to be involved, they can ask us to send somebody out. You can call us directly. We will get with the county clerk's number or with the county clerk's office, and we will work out exactly the best way to handle whatever problem that you're having.
In your training manual,
This is Sonia Aston.
yes, I'm sorry, Sonia Aston speaking. In your training manual, you have a list of all the important numbers that you're going to need on Election Day. But you can call 713-755-1617 on Election Day, and that's your dedicated line to answer these types of questions.
Do it again.
I'm sorry, the number is 713-755-1617.
And JR, since we're giving out phone numbers, you get some phone calls too.
Sure. If you have any voter registration-related questions, please call 713-274-9922. I'll repeat that, 713-274-9922.
And all of these numbers, not my number, I don't know why, but all of these numbers are included on your contacts list. They're in the packet that was handed out to you or will be handed out to you at your election judges training.
And let me reiterate, all election judges are required by law to attend the election judge training, the law training.
And Sonia, you're going to have anything more for poll watchers between now and the election? Any type of training at all?
Well, there is training during the training. We do speak to poll watchers in the training each session. So.
Yeah. Let me review a couple of issues that typically come up about poll watchers so that you'll have some standards to go by. A poll watcher has to be appointed by an official that's authorized to appoint a poll watcher. They have to give this certificate to you at the time that they show up to begin their service. While they're serving as a poll watcher, they are allowed to observe anything that goes on in the election process. They cannot do this, however. When the voter leaves the desk and goes into the polling area, they're not allowed to follow the voters to observe what they're doing unless one of the poll workers, one of the election clerks that works with you, goes with the voter to assist their voting. They are allowed to observe that. Now, in the past, we have advised election judges that they can mark off the area on the floor to divide the polling area where the machines are from where the poll watchers are allowed to stand and observe. Once they are on duty, they're not allowed to use any kind of electronic communication device. They're not allowed to record anything, either sound or pictures. They're not allowed to take pictures, and they're not allowed to make phone calls. They also are not allowed to communicate with the voters in any way whatsoever. They cannot speak to them. They cannot nod at them. They cannot make faces or signals to them in any way whatsoever.
And then we've got a phone call from Esther Compass from Precinct 27 about voter registration certificates. Esther, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Would you go ahead, please, with your question?
Okay. My question was, and I understand about the recent ruling to uphold the voter ID and all that, but I'm thinking that the voter registration certificate, in essence, really doesn't serve a purpose. Will it be eliminated?
Well, it does serve.
If you can't use it to vote, then what good does it do?
Let me tell you what the purpose is that you can use that certificate for. If you're a voter and you show up at a polling place and you have a certificate that shows that that precinct is where you're supposed to vote, and they don't have you on the list of voters, you do not have to cast a provisional ballot. They must provide a regular ballot to you to vote. That's if you have the certificate, in addition to the ID that you're presenting, showing that you're registered in that precinct. So it is useful from that point of view. And, of course, it's very useful from the voter registrar's point of view, and I'll let them tell you about that.
Hi, Esther. This is J.R. Harris with Mike Sullivan's office, voter registrar's office. There are some situations where a voter has an exemption from the photo ID requirements if they are disabled and have no form of identification and have applied with our office. We will print a voter registration certificate that has the letter E, a capital letter E, next to the VUID number, and they are allowed to present that to the election judge, and that will exempt them from the photo ID requirements. That E should also appear in the poll book itself. And so that is also another reason why a voter may be presenting a voter registration certificate.
Yes,
well, it just seems to me like this would be just very few extreme cases with the millions of registered voters. It seems to me like you're overlapping, wasting money on certificates that really are not going to be used by those millions of voters when they can present their ID.
Well,
you see what I'm saying? You don't need both.
Right now, a voter, though, must vote on Election Day in their precinct. So
right.
The voter ID card is the mechanism. They know what their precinct number is so that they can, find out where they go poll if they're looking at just the list of polling locations.
Yes, that voter registration certificate is the communication from the voter registrar to the voter indicating that they are, in fact, registered to vote. And you can look at the certificate, and you can see the name and address and precinct that you're registered to vote under. That is the communication that confirms all of that information. So when the voter has that certificate, when he receives that certificate, he can be reassured that he is registered to vote under that name, at that address, and in that precinct. And that is the confirmation he has that he is, in fact, a registered voter.
Another way a voter
Okay, plus he must have the ID as well.
Goes to vote, he must present the ID as well.
Right. So he needs both of them. The voter certificate doesn't do it for him, just does it for only together with an ID.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
thank you.
I would say do away with it. Why duplicate things, But that's okay.
That was the legislature.
All right. I sure will. Thank you.
And then next we have Sarah Gonzalez on the line who's going to ask a question about clarifying a request for assistance in voting. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead. You're on.
Well, I'd appreciate it if you could clarify when a voter is requesting assistance, who can actually assist them?
The voter can bring anybody they want with them to assist them. There's three options, actually. They can go use the Dow unit, which can provide them assistance. But they can bring their own assistant, and there's no requirements as to nationality, as to registration, as to age, or a candidate can even assist a voter.
Okay, there are some limitations. Let me just outline what they are. The person that they ask, and they can ask anybody except their union representative, their employer, or a candidate who's actually on the ballot that day. Cannot ask one of those.
Okay. Well, I've had issues with the same polling location for years with the election judge continually challenging that, and I have submitted some formal complaints about that individual, but so that's why I wanted to clarify, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Typically, what we have questions from the judge is to what extent can they evaluate the need for assistance. And you are not to challenge their need for assistance in any way. If they say they want assistance, they're entitled to assistance.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that.
If somebody comes in and says, I need help reading it or interpreting it, and this person's going to help me, have them swear that little oath, and they're entitled to assist. You're not allowed to evaluate or challenge their need for that assistance in any way whatsoever. They can also ask the election workers for assistance if they want.
Very good.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder to everyone, this is Terry O'Rourke in Harris County Attorney Vince Ryan's office. And if you have a question, just press 0. We now have a call from Pam Labriado from Precinct 781. Pam, are you on the line? Pamela?
Am I on the line?
Hello.
Yes.
You're on here.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, you're on the line. Go ahead.
Okay. My question was, if someone comes in with a voter registration certificate that's expired, what do we do?
They have a voter registration certificate that's expired.
Right.
Well, they still have to provide photo ID at this time. So if their voter registration card is expired, that won't help them. Whether it's expired or not, they need to, if their name's in the poll book, then they should have photo ID. If their name's not in the poll book, you need to call down to the voter registrar and determine if their name's supposed to be in the poll book. But in any event, they're supposed to have photo ID.
Okay.
Or as Doug got just real simple saying that won't prevent you from voting if you've got an expired certificate. You still got to have your voter ID, and if you're on the polls, you can vote, right?
Well, here's the thing. If the certificate is expired but the person's still in the book and they have the ID, just let them go ahead and vote a regular ballot. If they're not on the list, then have them vote a provisional ballot, and we will investigate the circumstances of their registration.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Labrido, is that good enough? All right. Thank you very much. And moving right along, we've got from Precinct 39, the famous John Behrman. Uh-oh. And John's asking if a voter presents on the polling place voter ID but doesn't have a certificate and is not on the list, et cetera, can we add them? I think better have John explain his question to us. John, are you there?
Yes.
Okay,
well, my question is essentially like the previous ones. If we call downtown and they look up downtown and indeed they are registered in my precinct, will they tell me that downtown, and can I write them in on the omissions list and give them a regular ballot?
Yes, if you call the voter registration department, we will tell you whether they are active and in your precinct. I'll turn it over to Sonia as to what the election judge should do with that information.
The election judge should write that person's name, their cert number, their address, and everything on the omissions list, and have the voter sign the omissions list and not the poll book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Again, this is Vince Ryan. If for some reason you're disconnected and you want to come back in, you can dial toll-free 855-756-7520. That's 855-756-7520, extension 26259, and then the number sign. 26259 and the number sign. Thank you.
All right, and now we've got from Precinct 253, Alfred Moore. Are you on the line, Mr. Moore?
Yes, I am.
All right, he's got a question about voter registration, and go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Yes, it's about voter registration and also judge acting on a provisional vote. When I have a registered voter who has been in the precinct for well over 50 years to be omitted from the polling list, but to call downtown and to find out that he's registered as a Republican in a different precinct altogether, with no changes being done. And now you want him to vote provisional. That's accumulated, and I investigated that further, but it happens all the time where people who are on the list and have been on the list for a long time is being omitted, where there's other people who have never been there or added to the list.
Well, let me just.
This is Doug Ray here.
Let me just review what we're talking about. First of all, voter registration in this state does not require you to register as a Republican or Democrat. If you vote in a Republican or Democratic primary, it limits the rights that you have to participate further in either Democratic primary runoffs or in Democrat or Republican conventions. However, a person who is registered to vote, who gets on the suspense list, for example, if something's mailed to them and it's returned, no such address or something to that problem, if it's returned and they're put on the suspense list, if they don't vote for 2 consecutive federal elections, their name will be removed from the list. Now, if you have a situation where somebody believes that they're supposed to be registered and they're willing to cast a provisional ballot swearing that they're a registered voter in that precinct, then that provisional ballot will go to the early voting ballot board, and they'll consider all of the evidence about the status of the registration of that person. And if that person is registered in that precinct, they will count the vote.
All right, Doug, he'd ask also, but what happens when he calls downtown and finds out that they're registered in another precinct? What should he do?
It's the same thing. If he insists that he's registered in the precinct where he's offering to vote and not in the other precinct, and I have to warn you about something. We went through a process over the last few years where we changed the boundaries of a lot of precincts. They were changed for a number of different reasons. So a person may have been registered and voted in that location for years and years and years and years, but today they're actually in a different precinct. And that's because we changed the boundary lines and they're on the other side of the boundary. The best thing to do in that situation is to send them to the correct place to vote in the correct precinct. That is the best thing to do. And it happened to a lot of people. A lot of people weren't too happy about it, that the boundary lines were changed because of redistricting, and they were moved into another precinct to vote in a different location where they traditionally had voted for many years. So that would be our best advice, to find out where they're registered, tell them where the location is, have them go to the new location and vote there.
Even if they have not changed resident, or if it has nothing else has changed, you're telling me that the precinct line was drawn in between, and I have a chart of the precinct and the lines and things of that nature. You mean to tell me that they are in a different precinct without there being separation?
This happened to a lot of people. They were moved even though their residents didn't move at all, and they were put into a different precinct. So a lot of people had this experience where when they went to vote, where they always voted, they actually had been moved into a different precinct that voted in a different location. Now, if the person lives in the same place, didn't move, and they're still in the same precinct physically, and they have been moved to the other precinct, and they insist that this is the correct precinct, then they can vote a provisional ballot, and if it's determined an error was made and they were put on the wrong precinct list, that vote will count. Okay, Mr. Moore, has that got it?
Sir, that's happening quite a bit in my precinct, and after encouraging people to come to vote, I'm interested in the young people and everyone voting, even though they have not changed residence. But to put everybody on a provisional voting list, there's no guarantee. I'm looking for them to vote in the Democratic Party and trying to encourage in voting.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We're going to move right along here, Mr. Moore. Thank you very much. And our next phone call is from Mary Flood Nugent, who sits on the early voting ballot board. Ms. Nugent, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Good morning.
And you are one of those people who has had precincts moved but whose home has not changed, right?
Yes, that's true. That's right.
All right, you'll go ahead with your question.
I'm just wondering when I assist a voter to cast a provisional ballot because of some issue with their ID maybe being expired on September 3rd of this year or something like that. Who is it that sits on the board that makes the determination as to whether that ballot will be cast?
Oh, the question is, who is the early voting ballot board now?
Well, the early voting ballot board would be the ones who make that determination. They sit around. I don't know. You said.
But who are those people?
Who are they, right?
Yeah, who are the members? I don't.
Mary, you're not on that, are you?
No.
Yeah,
but I am very curious who is, and I think I think precinct judges, the presiding judges should know. Everyone should know who's on that board.
All right, they are provided from the parties. The parties provide a list of people to be on the board, and the chairman is determined by who won the governor's race the last time. So
in the county.
In the county, and that was, of course, Bill White won last time, and so the Democratic Party is the actual chair of that board. But it has members from both parties. In fact, 3 or 4 parties, even your Green Party, I believe, and sometimes
right.
involved.
But is the list published? Is it an open record?
Yes, it's subject to open records.
Okay, and so
I know a few of the people that typically serve on there all the time, and a lot of them also serve on the Central Count board as well.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I mean, she's asking a question. I'm certainly, it's public. Can we put it on our website when we get through to find out as soon as we know? I don't know who they are. I know we've changed.
Well, there's a what it is a list is provided to the county clerk's office, and then those people show up, and then it's actually the chairman of the board that makes a decision who all should be working that particular day, because we have really with technology that we brought in and some legislation that Stan helped get passed, have really sped up the process of doing the. Well, actually, this is different. We're talking about provisionals. I'm sorry. So
yeah, I'm talking provisionals.
Yeah, I know. I apologize.
That's okay.
The same board that actually does the signature comparison actually also does work on the provisionals, but they'll review them after the election, and we can get the names of those put on our website, I guess. But it actually changes all the time, so it's not. I mean, the same people, but not all the people are working all the time.
I see, but they all accept responsibility for making that decision.
Yes,
and
they do a very good job of.
And the provisional voters. Right, and the person who has voted provisionally when do they receive notification as to whether or not their vote was counted?
After the election.
And how long after the election?
Well, there's a time frame as to when they're supposed to receive a notice from the ballot board, and I don't know off the top of my head exactly when that is, but it's within 2 or 3 weeks after the election.
And so if something were to go to runoff, those conceivably those could throw the results, right? I mean, if it takes that long to figure them all out.
All the votes that are submitted to the early voting ballot board are determined before the canvass.
Correct.
So all the provisionals are determined before the canvass?
Yes. They are, The provisionals that should be counted are counted, and they are included in the final report.
So the report that goes to the canvass board that's certified as the results includes all of the determinations on all the provisional ballots.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Mary, thank you. Well, we've got a little bit of time here. Reminding everyone, if you have a question, press 0 on your phone to get in to ask a question to Harris County Attorney Vince Ryan, your County Clerk Stan Stannard, or all we privileged bureaucrats who work for them. J.R. Harris here is the head of for Mike Sullivan. And
there's also quite a bit of information on www.harrisvotes.com. There is the photo ID training. There's also some additional information regarding disabled voters. You might find some information about how to direct disabled voters to vote. They can vote by mail. They can early vote and obviously vote on Election Day. We have a new form on the website for disabled voters that they can download and fill out if they want to do curbside voting. They'll need to bring somebody with them or hand it to a voter who's walking into the poll, but it will identify the vehicle and the location in the parking lot so that the election officials can find that vehicle much easier.
I do want to point out one place on harrisvotes.com that's very helpful. Our sample ballot is 11 tabloid pages long. So to actually find out what a voter's personal ballot is, on harrisvotes.com they can click on Find Your Polling Location and Personal Ballot. All they have to do is put their name in or their address, and then they can pull themselves up so they can find their personal ballot. Mine ends up being 2.5 pages long instead of 11. So really it's a great tool to find out what specifically will be on your ballot. And as you know, a voter can mark that up and bring it with them into the poll booth.
all right. Mary Flood Nugent, you got all your answers? Okay. We next have a call from Carol Chisholm from Precinct 61. Have we got Carol on the line?
Yes, this is Carol Chisholm from Precinct 61.
Wait a minute, can I get you to, let me speak up just a little bit louder, Ms. Chisholm. You've got a question about redistricting and the precincts. Can you go ahead?
Yes, sir. I'm concerned. A lot of my voters here. I went to an HOA meeting and explained that we have been redistricted and told them the boundary lines, and they're thinking that I can do something about that because they're in 61 where we originally were. They could walk to the school within a block or half a block or a short while. A lot of them were walkers. Now they're going to have to go and drive to the other precinct, and some of them are handicapped or slightly handicapped, and they're elderly. And what our concern is what can we do to get put back in our own precinct where we can just walk and continue to do as we've done for 35 years?
Well, we're fixing to go into a process next year where we're going to take a look at the boundary lines of precincts. Because of redistricting, we had to divide a bunch of precincts up. Let me give you the basic rules. The precinct can't have more than 5,000 registered voters in it, but also it cannot cross certain boundary lines. For example, county commissioner precinct. It can't cross a county commissioner precinct boundary line. State representatives, state senators, U.S. representatives, congressmen, and the State Board of Education. So a lot of the problems with dividing up these polling places, these precincts, had to do with the fact that the legislature readjusted where those boundary lines were, and they went right through the middle of existing polling places. Now, this resulted in a lot of precincts being just divided up into 2 or 3 parts. And what we're going to do next year is the county clerk's office, the voter registrar's office, the county commissioner precincts, we're all going to get together and we're going to try to redraw precincts so that we can take care of a lot of these problems. Some of them we're not going to be able to handle. but we're hoping that we will be able to, first of all, get rid of some of the precincts that really don't even have any voters in them. We're hoping that we can have a situation where neighborhoods will once again be reunited into one polling place. We want to make sure there's a convenient polling place for every voting precinct, and that we kind of even out the number of voters as much as we possibly can, so we don't have one polling place with 50 voters and another one of 5,000. We're going to go through that process next year, and the kind of concern that you're expressing right here about, putting people into a place where they can vote nearby their homes, that's one of the main things that we're going to be looking at when we do this. So that's going to happen next year.
If you have a concern right now, though, I recommend contacting your county commissioner and letting them know. They have people in their office that deal with these issues on a daily basis. So
right, I have, because I understand, why we did it. Can I ask, when you get this meeting together to do this, that you could contact some of the people that have worked the elections, that know the boundary lines and can explain, because this happened to us twice before, and at one point it took 11 years to get an apartment that was right close to our to our school where we voted. It took us 11 years to get that apartment put back into our precinct. So, I've been through this, but at this point I'm getting older and I need to retire, but I can give you a little bit of input and tell you how important to get voters out to vote, that it's important to keep them close to where they can vote. And I would like to volunteer to give any of my input, and I know some other precinct judges that have been around for a good while that feel the same way.
I believe that we're going to be contacting all the precinct judges to get exactly that kind of input.
Yeah, we want your input when we go through this process. So if you could, send us an email, send us a letter, we will try to take as much consideration when we do these lines as possible.
So
can we just call Stan's office for this?
Yes.
Because I'm going blind. I'm going to be, the next 6 months I probably won't be able to see anything.
Well,
so I am retiring. Pardon?
It's good to call your county commissioner too, because they are sensitive to your needs.
I have in the past, when we did this others, but like I said, I'm trying to just kind of step down. But I do feel this is very important, because at this meeting that we had that night here in the neighborhood, the people were very upset to know that they're not going to be able to go to our school to vote, that they have to go to the next subdivision. And I heard some people say, well, that's too far for us to go. They're not taking into consideration our needs in our community. So that's why I think it's important that y'all know what's happening, and let people know why it's done, and not let them blame it on our own precinct.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you, Ms. Chisholm. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and y'all have a blessed day, and thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Now we're going to go to Mary Emily Schultz from Precinct 55, and she's got a question. For example, if your name were Vincent Reed Ryan, and yet you are also known as Vince Ryan, what are the problems? Is that right, Ms. Schultz? Are you there?
That's exactly right. I just want to hear a clarification on that similarity between names.
In your poll books, we have actually pre-matched 94% of every registered voter in the county to their DPS IDs, and that includes even similar names, even people who've gotten married and have different last names. We identify almost all of those. So we have, in your poll book, you have the registered name, and if we have a hard match, we print in the poll book match, and if we have a similar name match, we print that similar name on the poll books. So it makes your job real easy. In most cases, there will be a few where we couldn't determine which person. There might be 2 or 3 DPS names that would potentially match. So in those cases, when we don't have a hard match, we do not print the name. So you'll have to do your best judgment. If
the name is not exact, and what I mean by exact is Vincent Reed Ryan, Jr., If it's not Vincent Reed Ryan Jr. in both places, if it's just Vince Ryan in another place, that is not an exact match. So they are going to have to sign a little box, put an initial in there that says it's a similar name. And all they're saying is that name and the other name both represent me.
Now, when you're doing this job, when you're the election clerk, it's up to you to make a determination based on what you're seeing in front of you as to whether the name really is similar enough to the name that's in the poll book. Now, 94% of the time, this is completely, done for you. So you can see that it is, in fact, a match. In a situation where it's not an exact match, there'll be two boxes on your poll book. One where there's basically when they're checking it, they're swearing they're the same person. And the second box, they check if they want to change their voter registration name to match their identification that they're presenting to you, so that they'll have the exact same name in both places. Some people don't want to do that. But if they want to check both boxes and swear that in fact, that is them, their similar name, and that they want to change, then the next time around, their names will be exactly the same. Now, what is the standard by which you determine that something is similar enough to be a similar name? Now, the Secretary of State's office has promulgated a bunch of suggestions on this basis. For example, if somebody is named Robert on your poll book, but the ID he presents says Bob, or vice versa, you know that Bob is a typical nickname for somebody named Robert. The same thing is true for a lot of names. There'll be a nickname on one ID, but not on the other. Now, when you go and register to get your driver's license, they usually require a birth certificate or something like that actually has your full exact name on it. So the driver's license usually it will say Vincent Reed Ryan on it. But the voter registration, that you can put any name that you want to on there. You may call yourself Junior Ryan for all we know. But if you're sitting there,
Chico Ryan.
If you're sitting there and you're the judge, it's up to you to make a determination whether the ID that you're being shown is similar enough to the name that's in the poll book that you can accept it as a regular voter. If not, then it's up to you to say this is not similar enough, and it usually has to be really different.
Well, one of the things that Secretary of State has promoted is to look at the totality of the circumstances.
That's right.
You want to look at the date of birth and also the address. So those will also help you identify. But basically, you're the judge that day, and so in your judicial discretion, you're the one who's making that determination. But as Doug said, there's a lot of different ones, and now you may be familiar with the nicknames for the people that have a similar ethnicity as you, but in a different ethnicity, you may not be so familiar with the nicknames. So the names may be wildly different to you, but that's where you want to go look at the totality of the circumstances and look at the date of birth and the address.
Yes. Basically what you're doing is you're acting as a fact finder. You're making a factual determination, just like a jury or a judge would do in a trial. And you're trying to determine, based on the evidence that's before you, whether that voter who's standing in front of you offering your identification is the voter that's in the list. Now, if you can't make that determination, if you're just not sure, then you can ask them to cast a provisional ballot instead, and that could be sent to the early voting ballot board for a determination based on all the records that they can review. So
okay, well, it's just I understand what you're saying. It just seems to confirm that this is the kind of thing that could easily be challenged by those poll watchers or the alternate judge who's of a different party. And so they would call downtown, which has also happened to me in the past. And so I don't know how the people downtown would make that decision, except if the judge is
The judge is in charge of making that decision.
You make that call.
Now, they may question it, they may challenge it, but it's really your job to make that determination. Now, if you accept it as an actual ballot and they are upset about that, they can complain all they want to, but no one can overrule you.
Okay. All right. Well, that answers the question. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go to Jill Muffett, but before we do that, I want to remind everyone who's still on the phone, if you've got a question, press 0. we think that may be Jill Moffitt. Anyway, this is, go ahead. Are you on the line?
Yes.
Is this Jill Moffitt?
Yeah, this is?
Yeah, okay, good. And she's got a question about disabled people. I've got Mustard on mine, so okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, disabled drives up. They want to vote in the parking lot. Would it be easier for the election judge if they're experiencing a lot of disabled voters that vote in the parking lot curbside to move the 100-foot boundary to past where the disabled person could vote without electioneers?
I've gotten a similar question before, just recently, and it was that the 100-foot marker, there was basically a field in front of the property as a school, and then the parking lot was beyond the 100-foot marker. And the question is whether or not the zone of that 100-foot would extend beyond that 100-foot. And there is no code specifically written regarding this issue, but what I would say that if there is a voter that is curbside voting outside the 100-foot marker, there'd be a bit of a zone around that car, that vehicle, but you can't really extend beyond the 100-foot by code. So what I would do is tell that if you have maybe you have a designated, if you're having that many curbside voters, you have a designated parking spot, and then would tell the people who are pushing cards to stay away from the card while that person is voting. But when they're not voting, I don't see how you can prevent people from being around the vehicle.
Here, I want to give you a piece of advice, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I want everybody to understand this. It's up to you, the judge, to determine where that 100-foot barrier is. Do you understand what I'm telling you? It's up to you to determine where the 100-foot barrier is. So you mark it where you think the 100 feet is.
All right.
Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. I really appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you. And everyone out there who's still on the line, if you press 0, you're going to get your questions answered by Stan Stannard, Vincent Reed, Chico Ryan Jr., Douglas Ray, Sonia Aston, J.R. Harris, and Miss Wynn. So please call in. And remember, if you get disconnected, you call... what else is it? You call 855-756-7520, extension 26259, and then the pound sign. So we've got a few seconds here between our calls.
Let me repeat something I promised to do earlier, and that is to tell you our phone numbers once again. So if you're ready, let me just tell you that the office phone number for the county attorney's office that you can call is 713-274-5163, or you can call my cell phone. That is 281-935-1904. That's 713-274-5163 and 281-935-1904.
All right, and we've got some questions coming from our website, so you who are listening and are on the website, stay tuned because we're going to get to you. Right now on the phone, we've got Lula Rhodes from Precinct 230. Miss Rhodes, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, if you can speak up a little bit for us.
I would like to know what website to go to get the Find Personal ballot and the location where I can go to get this.
If you go to www.harrisvotes.com, and right on that page, you can identify, there's a button that you can push for your personal sample ballot, or anyone can go get their personal sample ballot if they're registered in Harris County. There's also a button at the bottom of the page where you can push and get the sample ballot for the entire county.
Thank you very, very much. appreciate that.
Where it says find your poll and view voter-specific ballot. You click on that link, and it will take you to a chart. You fill in your name, and it'll show you your specific ballot.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay, if you'll be patient, you guys on the website, we're going to get your questions in here in just a minute. And while we've got a moment, open to anybody here.
There's a couple new forms that we have. One of them is we're allowing judges to have volunteers work the polls. You can have, if you were assigned, say, 6 people in your polls, that's including the presiding judge, alternate judge, and then 4 clerks, you can have up to 2 additional workers who are volunteering. They have to have the same credentials as any other person working in the polls, which means they have to be registered. They have to be over the age of 18. Well, obviously, if they're registered. You can have 2 student clerks only at one time. The students could be volunteers if you want. Student clerks do get paid unless they're volunteering. What the person will do is fill a waiver out waiving pay for that day, and they need to fill in where their Social Security number would go on the compensation sheet that they're a volunteer, and then put in 0 hours. You can also use this person to fulfill your bilingual requirement, and that might be very helpful. As we stated in the past, you cannot have, well, let me just step back. We had one woman who had her heart in the right place. However, she brought in a civics class of 26 students and had them work the polls. Do not do that, please. It created a huge headache for us. You're only allowed the number of people that you've been assigned at one time. We do allow you to split some of the shifts, but it's only the PJ and AJ have to be there all day, and then the clerks can split only with one other person.
Okay, very good.
One thing I'd like to remind everybody of is to make sure that you get the language interpreters that the county clerk's office has indicated that you need. If you need some help finding some people, you get with the county clerk's office and let them know that you need some help finding the interpreters. The Justice Department has been very interested in this issue over the last couple of years. We've had some conversations with them recently. They have not told us whether they're going to send anybody down for this particular election to see how we're performing on this issue, but they have done so in the past. And I want to make sure that we have, in fact, complied with the law as far as the interpreters are concerned.
We've provided for those who are having difficulty finding bilingual clerks a sheet that will give you some suggestions. We need to have you fill those out so you can identify the efforts that you went to go find a bilingual person to fulfill that requirement if you're not able to fulfill the requirement. That way we can have evidence, if anybody were asked, all the efforts that you took to get that accomplished.
Okay, we've got a phone call here from Priscilla Bloomquist from Precinct 453. Ms. Bloomquist, are you on the line?
Yes, good morning.
How are you? You've got a question about poll watchers, and we've got some experts on poll watchers here, so go ahead.
Okay, 2 questions. At early voting, my clerks were wondering if the poll watcher is allowed to stand behind them where they have a view of the computer so they can see, all the voter information on the screen. And the second question is where our lunchroom and break room is. We're obviously not in the voting area. When we're out there, are the poll watchers allowed to speak to us there?
Okay. The first issue, the poll watchers are entitled to observe any activity that you're engaged in while voting is going on, whether it's setting up, taking down, or actual voting. So, yes, they can stand behind you and see what information is on the screen. They can't interfere with the process. They can't be intrusive. They can't, lean over your shoulder and interfere with what you're doing. They also can speak only when they observe a violation of procedure or election law. And whoever they speak to can direct them to the election judge. And once their complaint is stated, that conversation ends unless the election judge invites further conversation. So they can say, thank you very much, and that should be the end of it. Now, if you leave the election area so that you're not actually on duty, the question at that point is, can they converse with you about the election? Now, the rule is that they're not allowed to talk to you about the election while they're on duty. That is, the poll watcher is not allowed to talk to anybody in the polling place about the election. They can speak on other subjects. They can say, how about them Texans? But not about the election. But that's only while you're on duty in the polling place. If you leave and you're across the street at the Jack in the Box, or if you're in the cafeteria down the hall and they approach you, they can speak to you just like anybody else. However, while you're on duty, while you're in the polling place, while you're working, they cannot talk to you about the election. That answer your question?
Okay, but when you're in the polling place, you don't mean they can talk about the Texans in the polling place?
Yes, they can talk about any subject except the election. They are not allowed to talk to the voters in any way. They can talk to the workers, but not about any issue having to do with the election. So if you're in a polling place, it's real slow that day, there's no voters in there, and they want to talk about football or, TV shows on last night, they can do so. But they cannot say anything, have any discussion with you about the election in any way whatsoever while they're on duty.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, as I described, you can, if they have a problem, if they observe some problem in procedure or the law, they can say it. That's not the way that the law allows you to do that. Now, all of the workers can direct that poll watcher to the election judge, and the election judge does not have to continue the conversation unless they wish to. They can hear the report, and that's the end of it.
And it's our recommendation that when the poll watcher comes in, that you request that the poll watcher direct all comments to you and not to your workers, so it's not confusing and interruptive to the workers. So until you make that request, they have the authority to speak to any of the poll workers.
Yeah, you can instruct your workers as well that if a poll watcher says anything, to direct them to the election judge, not engage in any conversation with them.
Right, they can talk to them once about that issue, right?
We train and tell the poll watchers, as well as our election judge, try to make it as friendly and non-confrontational environment as possible. And I'll try to work together. It works the best for all concerned.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're going to move right on to precinct number 428. Mena, hope I got this right. La Bugla?
Yes.
428. Yeah, you're on here. Have you got a question about the voter IDs, right?
The name in the poll book, the last name and the address is different from the ID presented because of marriage. So how could we determine that person is the one in the poll book?
Well, 94% of the time we have a hard match. We have enough information either by birth date or other information to resolve those. There will be some times when we cannot resolve those. So then, like Doug has said earlier, you make the determination, but if you can't make a positive determination yourself, then your option is to let them vote provisionally.
Okay.
The situation you're describing is, for example, let's say that Mary Smith lives in one location and marries Joe Jones and moves in with him, and now they're married, and her name doesn't match the name that's on her ID. She hadn't gone to the driver's license bureau and got a new license issued yet. It doesn't match either the address or the name. If the first name is the same, and what other information can they rely on?
Date of birth.
Date of birth is the same, and their explanation is, I got married and changed my name and moved in with my husband. Then consider all those facts and determine whether that name is similar or not to the name that's in your poll book to accept it or not. And if, in fact, if you don't feel like it is similar enough and the explanation and all the information available to you does not convince you that it is the same person, then have them vote a provisional ballot instead.
Okay. All right.
You are the judge.
Yes. That
All right.
answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Remember, if you have a question, press 0. You're listening to Vincent Reed Ride Jr., the county attorney, Stan Stannard, the county clerk, and many of their employees and faithful servants, including J.R. Harris from the Tax Assessor Collector Registrar's Office and his assistant, Miss Wynn. So call in if you've got a question.
And if I could take a few minutes to talk about, my name is J.R. Harris with the Voter Registrar's Office. I'd like to talk about the cure process. If a voter does not have a valid form of ID and they end up voting provisionally, which is what should happen, please give them that notice to the provisional voter, which tells them that they can come into any of our branch offices during our normal work hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30 p.m., all the way up until 6 days after the election, November 10th, and they can come in to present a valid form of identification. Perhaps they have an expired license. Please let them know that they can go to DPS within that window of opportunity, get a new temporary license or ID, and come into our office and show us. And we will make a notation of that and pair it up with the provisional ballot and present that to the early voting ballot board. You may also have a situation where a voter does not have any ID because of a religious objection. Please let them know that there's a temporary exemption for that, and they can apply at any of our 16 branches throughout the county. That exemption is only effective for that particular election, and they have that same window of opportunity up until November 10th after the election. So please, we have a map that should be in your packet. Please give those maps to those provisional ID voters and let them know that they can come into any of our branches.
Remember, this is a situation where a person shows up, they're on the roll, but they don't have one of the 7 types of accepted IDs. They can cure that by going to the tax assessor's office and showing the ID at the tax assessor's office.
Also, we'd like to encourage you to let all your friends, families, and neighbors know that photo ID is required for this election. The more we can spread out the word, the less we'll have issues at the polls.
Very good. And we've got Doug Ray to explain the Supreme Court decision for all you judges who want some additional explanation. And remember, if you've got a call or question, press 0 and you'll be on the line. Right now we have from Precinct 395, Sarah Gonzalez. Sarah, are you on the line?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. You've got a question on provisional voting ballot.
Well, it's actually on the mail-in ballot process.
Okay.
I understand that there was an issue with the amount of postage that was specified on the mail-in ballots that were actually generated by Stan Stannard's office, and I'd just like to understand what provisions, if any, have been put in place to address the issue.
I'll be happy to explain that to you. If the ballot was metered, it only cost 69 cents. If a stamp was put on it, it was required 70 cents. So now both those amounts are put on the envelope so that the voter has a choice of whether they get metered or put a stamp on it.
And regardless of any postage due, the post office is required by law to deliver the ballots, even if it has insufficient postage, because my office does have an insufficient postage account, so that any ballot we would pay any undue postage with.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
Sure. All ballots have been delivered to the Harris County Clerk's office at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate the information.
You bet. And this is a reminder again, if you've got a question, dial 0 on your phone there to get in here. And this is Harris County Attorney Vince Ryan, Stan Stannard, your county clerk, and many of our assistants here. And so this is your chance to ask your questions about the election. We've got a minute here. If you got anything additional, guys?
We are taking a survey. We've created a survey that's going to be in all the packets for all the clerks and judges to sign. And basically, we're trying to identify some information about the polling location, whether or not your supplies were sufficient. But there's two important issues. We want to identify how many people are using the curbside voting at each polling location. And also we want to identify the bilingual, whether or not you had a bilingual interpreter, and how many voters came in requesting bilingual assistance. This information is very helpful in making a determination if we're going to have to require continued bilingual assistance at that poll. We are hoping to gather enough information to talk to the DOJ to potentially limit the requirements, because many of you have come to us saying you've again and again provided the bilingual assistance, yet no one showed up requesting the assistance. So it's very important that you have everyone in your poll participate in the survey and turn over that information at the end of the evening. And plus, if you have any other issues or questions or suggestions, we very much appreciate you providing that. We have implemented a number of suggestions that we've heard from you out there in the polls throughout our process. We're always working to become more efficient and more helpful for you.
Yeah, one other issue I want you to be sensitive to is disability access. If you have anybody comment about whether or not it's difficult to access your polling place by a disabled person, please let us know. We would like to, whenever we can, try to modify the access situation to make it easier for disabled people to get in. If there's an issue with a door or a parking space or a ramp or anything like that, please let the county clerk's office know as early as you possibly can of the existence of the issue, so we can try to work out a solution as early as we possibly can.
Very good. Can we move right along now to Miss Carolyn Riggs from precinct number 738? She's got a poll watcher question. Miss Riggs, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, ask your question.
My question is in reference to the poll watcher and their access to view everything of early voting and day of election person, that if your workers are having their chairs and the tables are basically up against the wall, then it would be not our responsibility to provide a location for them to stand, but they are able to watch and see everything from wherever the space is available. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
We're not there to find them space, but make everything convenient for everybody.
Yes, what you need to do is to not interfere with their ability to observe what you're doing, and they're not to interfere with your actual operation of the election. So try to set it up to accommodate everybody's role in the election process, and don't have a situation where you're actually interfering with their ability to observe the election, but at the same time keep it in mind that they aren't supposed to interfere with your ability to actually run the election either. So
right, that's what I was looking for, actually. Also, in reference to the not having a proper photo ID, my experience has been that I've afforded the voters, making sure they're aware that if you have time, you can go home and get your photo ID. Some of them, unfortunately, think they can come right back there with their ID after they vote. No, that's not correct. So they need to be aware that if you have time, you better go do that. Cause once you voted, you have 6 days to cure it, but not at that location.
Yeah, make sure they understand where it is they have to go with their ID in order to cure that problem.
Right, that saved the voter a long trip, so they thank me very good for that. They came back and voted, no problem. Thank you.
Good. Very good. Thank you very much. We've got from Precinct 554, John Harrison. Mr. Harrison, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Would you go ahead with your question about an 18-year-old?
An 18-year-old whose birthday was in September received what I believe is a registration certificate from the county clerk's office, and if they don't vote, will they be dropped from the polls, and when?
This is JR with the Voter Registrations Office. They will not be dropped from the polls if they do not vote. Currently, it appears as though they're an active voter, and they would remain an active voter unless they move. If they move and we receive return mail from that voter, then they would be put on the suspense list and perhaps removed if they don't vote or update their information within 2 federal elections. So it sounds like this 18-year-old is an active voter, and there's no reason to believe at this time they would be removed from the poll, from the list of registered voters for simply not voting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Get on the suspense list. Every 2 years, the voter registrar's office sends out a new registration certificate. It's indicated that it's not to be forwarded. So if it goes to the address and the person no longer lives there, it'll be returned to the voter registrar's office, and that's when they'll be put on the suspense list. Even if they're on the suspense list, you can still vote. You can show up and you can offer to vote, and you will be allowed to vote pending your change of residency. However, if you don't vote for 2 election cycles and you're on the suspense list, then you'll be dropped from the book. If you don't ever move and your registration certificate keeps going to the same place, you could be on the list for 40 years, and you would still be shown as a registered active voter.
Yeah, but of course...
Thank you very much. That helps.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And for those who are still out there on the line, if you press 0, you'll get through to us to ask your question. This is Harris County Attorney Vince Ryan's office, together with Stan Stannard, your county clerk, answering your questions, along with representatives from tax assessor collector himself, Sullivan, but he's got his top man, J.R. Harris, right here. So we've got answers for your questions, and don't be shy. We have from precinct number 240 or 295, Herman Harmon, are you on the line?
Yes, it's Jarman.
Jarman, excuse me.
Yes, that's quite all right. I apologize for this because I was called away a couple of times during the discussion on volunteers. My regular alternate judge cannot be with me at the exact time she needs to be there. I heard something about volunteers. She does most of the paperwork. In fact, she does all of it. Is it possible that she can come in and do the paperwork? And again, this may have already been addressed, but I was out and as a volunteer to not be paid, come in and do the paperwork and the compensation sheet, that sort of thing. That's one question. You want to answer those separately?
I can answer that question. Sure, if she's willing to come in and not get paid, you can also hire her as one of your clerks and then have someone split that shift with her as well so she could get paid for the time that she is there. You will be assigned another alternate clerk as well.
Yes. Okay. Now, thank you for that. The other question is, I did go to my tablet as you were talking to look up my sample ballot. I entered my name and street address as indicated. And once I pressed sample ballot, there was some red writing that came up that indicated waiting for confirmation. Please verify before election. My question is, what are we waiting for confirmation on as to whether or not I'm legitimate or waiting for the confirmation of the ballot? Because it's been on.
No, we're waiting on confirmation for the polling place. The odds are, that it's going to be what it's listed there. We're just waiting for the official return piece of paperwork from that polling place saying that, yes, we know you're going to be there. It's a confirmation. We've already locked it down. We're just waiting for the paperwork.
When you said the paperwork, maybe I'm a little confused. You said, I'm going to be there.
No, it's not. It's
okay.
Confirmation of the polling location. It's the
polling location. Okay.
Yes.
That needs to be confirmed. Oftentimes, especially the Houston Independent School District, is slow to confirm that the facilities will always be available to finish that paperwork up. Pretty much verbally, they've confirmed that all the locations are going to be available. It's just we haven't received the paperwork that says, yes, indeed, this location's available.
Okay, so this is my voting location, not my precinct that I will be in charge of, because
Correct.
that's the one we're waiting for. Okay, very good. I appreciate your help. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Remember, if you've got a question, press 0. Now we've got a call from Ms. Harris in precinct 597. Are you on the line, Ms. Harris?
Yes, I am.
All right. Well, go ahead. You've got a question. Go ahead. We're here.
Okay, my question was related to the survey that's going to be included in the package where we're going to be required. Well, one, the question is it a requirement? And two, I just see a couple of issues with, indicating how many people ask for bilingual assistance. In my precinct, we're going to have all 3 languages. We get pretty busy. We have several ballots. We have several ballot styles. There are people who ask for assistance at the qualifying table from the election workers or who bring their own, and there's some people who bring their own and are at the ballot. They're at the e-slate, and then they ask, and there is no way for me as a judge to accurately know how many people that's going to be. And when that's coming in, because, of course, I'm busy, and then so are the clerk. So then it leads you into a situation where you just might say, I see an Asian person, so I'm going to check down that maybe they did that, when, in fact, all they did was bring their child or their sister or somebody that, with them, to help them, not necessarily asking for bilingual assistance. So basically we're going to be looking at the immutable characteristics and saying they have a person assisting them, therefore that must be bilingual. And then, of course, our bilingual clerks also assist people not for languages purposes, but simply because they do not know how to operate the e-slate. So how are we effectively supposed to get this done? And then secondarily, overall, is it not based on, the demographics in your precinct? So if no one comes in and asks, does that mean that we then don't need a clerk? Because no one came in on that election, but the one after or before that, there were several more. So in a nutshell, that's what
I understand that it's going to be difficult to get hard numbers, and we're going to be taking these surveys over several elections so that we can identify this is just the first time that we're actually starting to take data down. So it could be, and if you are getting multiple people coming asking for bilingual assistance, but say you have all 3, but no one's actually coming in and asking for Chinese, but they are for Vietnamese and Spanish, we would want to know that. And if it's just ballpark figures, we don't have to know that actually, 13 people did indeed ask for it. But if you've got, 5 or more people asking, that's what we really want to know. If absolutely nobody came in to ask for bilingual assistance, we want to know that too. That doesn't mean that particular polling location won't be required to have a bilingual person. It's just going to be helping us to develop information over several elections to determine what is the actual need in those locations. And as you know, that we have a very mobile society, so there could be changes over elections where there wasn't a need before and now there is. But right now, the only way we're able to determine is by looking at the number of people who have a surname that is either Spanish surname, Vietnamese, or Chinese surname, and that is an inexact science. So we're trying to get another data point from the people who are actually working the polls. And that's why we're also asking that all the poll workers do fill out the the survey, because the bilingual clerks who are there might have a better idea of how many people they assisted with language, more so than you would, because you weren't the one who was always identifying it. So that's why it's important that we do have everyone participate in the survey.
Well, I guess I would just say it's going to be seriously inaccurate. I serve as a bilingual as well, but I do help people who don't need language assistance. So if the clerk sees me and they're saying, oh, okay, you're up there, well, she must be helping them because there's language, because there's a Hispanic person here, that's not necessarily the case. Because we help everybody, and the majority, people besides the language, you have an issue with the machine or you don't know how to select or what have you. So if you've got a clerk there and it says, okay, I needed help, and because I see my Vietnamese interpreter over there, I'm thinking he's helping this person with Vietnamese, and that may not be the case. It's just something that I want to put out there that it's going to be really inaccurate, and there's going to be, problems with that. And if we're really busy, nobody's going to remember. I mean, they're going to be like, well, maybe I did, maybe I helped a lot of people. I would just put that forward, and
if it's more than one person, we want to know that. But we've had situations where we've been told that for years there's not been a single request for bilingual assistance. It sounds like at your poll, there's still going to be a need. So just put that down.
We're trying to comply with the law of providing this kind of assistance, and we're trying to kind of fine-tune the system so that we can target the places that really need it and concentrate our resources there. One thing I wanted to bring up, but while there's a break right here, that I think that one of the callers mentioned something about a runoff election. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that for the county and the state races, whoever gets the most votes will be declared the winner. There's not going to be a runoff for those races. Lots of the elections, however, involve school districts and cities, and what the law is as far as the cities and the school districts are concerned is different. Lots of city charters, for example, will provide that a majority vote is required in order to elect somebody. So it really goes by kind of a contest-by-contest basis on that. Some of the cities might have runoff elections if they have a lot of candidates for any particular office, but the county and the state races, the November election will decide the winner.
There's an important issue that the law changed in 2013 regarding bond elections. The law now requires that the entities that are having a bond election provide much more information to the voting public than in the past. They're required that the bond order, which is now much more detailed, be posted at each polling location. There are 10 entities that are holding bond elections in this coming November election. You will be provided a packet if you are indeed holding a bond election for this information, and it's imperative that all the notices be posted. You will be given a notice to post on the wall letting the voter know that there is a bond election and the information is available. Then you will need to keep a copy of that bond order on your qualifying table so that the voters can review it if they are so interested. At the end of the day, you will need to sign a document that says that you did indeed post all this information. And it's very, very, very important that this whole process be done in order to ensure the viability of the bond election.
Yes, and somebody from the district that's holding the bond election may come to your polling place to make sure that you actually have posted all these notices. We have told the entities, for example, the Katy Independent School District is holding a very large bond election. We've told the people at the Katy Independent School District that it's their responsibility to make sure those postings are up. So they might send somebody to each one of the polling places that are subject to a bond election to check up on you. So don't be offended. They're trying to make sure that the law is being complied with and make sure that you post everything that you're supposed to post.
All right. Good enough. You got your questions answered? I guess so. We're going to move on to Chris McKinley from precinct number 275, who's got a question about the poll location. Mr. McKinley?
It's Curtis McKinley. Yeah, it's Curtis McKinley at 478.
Curtis. Okay.
This has nothing to do with the actual voting itself. It's the location. I understand that y'all compensate these locations. How do we find out what that amount is?
Well, if it's a public building, they're not allowed to charge us anything.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm considering, even though because we had to move from an elementary school, because this was right before I got here. In fact, I had to move it because we were apparently causing problems, and I found that the location was problematic because there were stairs involved, and the principal didn't want us to, have our own private room, and there are all these little, crumb snatchers running around and stuff. So I had to move it, and I caught all the flack from the blue hairs, right? They've been going to this location for 30 years. What am I doing? Anyway, however, I do know that that the location now that's having it is being compensated, and I just wanted to find out how do I find out what it is, or if you know the amount.
Well, we have a contract with that location if it's not a public building.
Yeah, just contact my office. This is Stan Stanart, and we can find out what we're paying them.
Is that public information, or is that privileged for just judges, or, I mean, anybody can ask, right?
Yeah, anybody could ask, yes.
Okay. And if I was inclined to want to find a public place in order to save the county money, you would endorse that?
We would love it.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, we want to find the best place for the voters, and sometimes we're willing to pay a little bit to make sure it's got good parking, good ADA. In other words, it has to have ADA. We need to find the best ADA compliant location. So it's
it's got to meet certain criteria. I got that.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well,
Thanks
thank
for
you
putting
very
this on.
much. For all those who are still listening, is press 0 if you've got a question, and you've also got the website, so you can put questions through on the website too, and that's harriscountyattorney.net.
Since the ADA came up, I want to reemphasize to you, if you on Election Day encounter any problems with accessibility by disabled people, please let us know so we can try to work out a solution so that they'll be fully accessible. That is, your polling place will be fully accessible.
And if you encounter it early in the day, let us know. Maybe we can remedy it before the end of the day.
Very good. Has that got your question answered? And we've got a question now from precinct number 288. 288. Sunny Cope.
Yes, it's Sunny.
Sunny
yes.
Cope. On the bond.
Yes, and yes, my question is regarding the bond notices for the 2 weeks of early voting, since people can obviously vote in any of those locations. Do we want to make sure that we have each and every bond initiative posted on our walls for the 2 weeks of early voting?
Yes, you need a really big wall.
We do need a giant wall.
Yes, ma'am. No, I actually talked to the Secretary of State and got them to agree that we would put one-page notice on the wall, and that you will have a notebook, because Harris County is so big. We'll have the 10 different locations entities that are holding the bond election, but we also have to have it in 4 languages. So
correct.
Have a thumbtack that could stand the weight of each of those orders is pretty difficult. So they've agreed to allow us to put it in a notebook. That notebook will need to be placed on the qualifying table so it's accessible by the voters.
All right. So we want to put it up on the walls to the extent that we can, but we have notebooks that we would have placed on each one of the table locations.
You're almost correct. We have a one-page notice that lists all of the entities that are holding a bond election, and that their information on that bond election is available, and we're posting that one-page notice on the wall. And then you have a notebook that has all 10 entities' bond elections contained in the one notebook.
So each one of our early voting locations will have one notebook with all of that information in it.
Correct. The only thing that has to be posted is that one page at the early voting locations. We've gotten a waiver from the Secretary of State where we can just post that one page saying we have a notebook with all these entities' bond information in that notebook.
Okay, and that was in our folders. I went through those yesterday, and I didn't specifically remember seeing.
My name is Brenda Key, Precinct 114 in Tomball. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Hey, we're back on the line. This is Terry O'Rourke in County Attorney's Office with Vincent Reed Chico Ryan Jr., your county attorney, and Stan Stannard, your county clerk, with lots of the officials here to answer your questions. We got cut off briefly, but to remind you that if you get cut off, dial 855-756-7520, extension 26259, and hit the pound sign. So we've got, I hope, Brenda Key on the line from Tomball. Brenda Key. Well, Ms. Key had asked a question about an unsigned registration card. Does that make a difference? Voter registration card.
This is J.R. Harris with the Voter Registration Office, and the question was if a voter shows up with an unsigned voter registration card. Well, just first off, just as a reminder, a registration card alone is not sufficient. You need a valid form of identification, unless it's a voter registration card that has an E on it, which means they are exempt from the voter requirements. So a voter registration card on its own generally is not acceptable. You need a valid form of photo identification. Yes, a voter registration card is required to be signed by the voter upon receipt. However, a lack of a signature on the back of a voter registration card should not have any effect whatsoever upon that person's right to vote.
Yes, if they're on the voter roll and they have the ID, they should be allowed to vote even if they don't have their voter registration card.
And this is yet another reminder for everybody who's listening. If you came in late or you have friends who are in the system and want to know the questions, everything that we've said here is going to be on www.harriscountyattorney.net. So you can listen to this rebroadcast at 3 a.m. in the morning if you want to. 24/7, we're going to be available. So that's www.harriscountyattorney.net on our website. Dan, have you got anything else? We've got a few moments here while we're waiting for people. Remember, dial 0 if you've got a question, but you've got your county clerk right here.
Well, remember, we're behind the scenes here. And on Election Day, you are the face of elections for Harris County. And we really appreciate you for the job you do there, your smiling face. I know you're going to have a few voters that aren't always going to, it's going to be hard to smile to, but please do that. And we appreciate you being that face of elections for Harris County and doing the great job that you do running the elections for us here in Harris County. So if we don't get a chance to say thank you, I want to really say thank you today to you for what you do. And let it be known, it's very much appreciated.
And don't forget that you're not alone. You have all of the people at the county clerk's office, the technical people, and and Sonia's office to back you up. You have the people at the voter registrar's office to back you up. You have the folks here at our office to back you up. If you need any help, don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't feel like you're just out there and you don't know what to do and you can't figure it out on your own, that you can't reach out to either the clerk's office or the voter registrar's office or the county attorney's office and ask for some assistance.
And Vince Ryan, your county attorney, is going to tell you about the teams that we've got.
Well, actually, Doug, why don't you describe, this is Vince Ryan, on Election Day, again, if there is a substantial problem, we have teams of assistant county attorneys along with our investigators who are licensed peace officers who, if necessary, can go out to your precinct, help you with whatever the problem is, review it, and then get the appropriate persons here in county government to answer whatever questions might arise too. So do not hesitate on Election Day. As Stan just said, you are the face of democracy on Election Day.
Now, basically what we have is people are trained in election law, and we have the investigators and paired with them. I would prefer that you call the county clerk's judges line. That's the 713-755-1617 line, and ask for assistance. They will get with us, and we'll send a team of people if it's determined that that would be the best course of action. Of course, you can call me directly. I will inform the county clerk's office what we're up to, but feel free to let us know if you feel like that kind of assistance will be helpful to you. If you have a breach of the peace, somebody's, engaged in fisticuffs, threatening mayhem, something like that, call 911 and get the constable or the police officers to come out to your location to give you some assistance, of the sheriff's office. Don't just sit around saying, well, I wonder if we could handle this on our own. No, call the police. Now, short of that, and if you think that you need some assistance, and one of the most common things that we have run into where this is the case is they'll have some question about the activities of the electioneers outside the 100-foot line. Of course, we might be able to assist with that. Your jurisdiction might end at that marker, but if it's interfering with the election, we can have people try to go figure out a solution so that that interference will stop. That's one very important situation that people have brought up to me over and over and over again. But don't feel like you're on your own in a situation like that. Let us know if you think that we can be of some help. And also, on top of that, if you just have some legal question, you can't quite get a hold of me, the voter registrar's number for judges, that 274-9922 number, if you call that number, we will have assistant county attorneys trained in election law at that number who will help answer your questions as well. So you have lots of different ways that you can approach it. You can call the county clerk's office, you can call our office, you can call the voter registrar. There will be help available in any of those, through any of those means.
We also have, as you're aware, that we have a technical team that's available. They come and check on each polling location at a minimum of 6 times a day. We've now requested that our techs have a piece of paper that you will just initial that they were there, because they are required to go in and check on you. So please be sure to fill out that information should they, when they come in. Don't be surprised if they're asking you to initial something that they've been there.
All right, very good. And we've got a question from Precinct 473, Randy Balcones. Rudy Balcones, are you on the line?
That's close enough, sir.
Close enough. Okay, well, I get them from the computer here, so go ahead.
Well, my question was, maybe you've covered because we dropped.
Could you, excuse me, we're trying to hear here. Can you get a little closer to your speaker or microphone or whatever to help us?
Does this help?
Yes.
Okay, question was, maybe you covered it already. Our line was dropped. What do you want to do if someone suspects voter fraud, intentional fraud? How do you want us to handle it?
Call our office. We want to know about any of these issues. This is the county clerk, Stan Stannard, and we will try to resolve and get a solution. If we need to have Doug from Vince Ryan's office go out there or one of the investigators, we'll send them out there.
Yes, basically what the district attorney wants us to do is to send an investigator and get statements from everybody involved, and then forward that information to them for possible prosecution.
You got that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And of course, as an election judge, it's your job to make sure that doesn't happen. So if you see somebody who's attempting to commit something you consider to be voter fraud, you challenge it. Yeah, if you suspect they've got a photo ID that looks like it's been produced on their computer, you could always require them to vote provisionally to preserve the integrity of our elections. And in each such situation, make sure that we have an opportunity to document what happened. Yes.
All right. For all those who are still on the line, remember, press 0 because we're getting close to that hour we call last call, but we're not there yet. And I'm going to do a little bit of rolling the credits here. Amy Nguyen, the manager of voters in the Voter Registration Division of the Tax Assessor Collector's Office is here. J.R. Harris, the Director of Compliance in the Tax Assessor Collector's Office, and also the chief right-hand man for all the questions that Mr. Sullivan has in his office. Sonia Aston, who's the administrator of the election department of the county clerk's office, and the county clerk himself, Stan Stannard. Douglas Ray, the managing attorney of the Public Law Practice Group. Vince Ryan himself, the county attorney, is here, and me, Terry O'Rourke. We've got one more question here from precinct number 660, Lloyd, I don't pronounce this right. Gautier, precinct 660.
Yes, it's actually Gautier, but that's fine, no problem.
All right. And you you got a question about felony convictions and probation.
Yes. Someone recently told me that if someone has a previous felony conviction, but they have gone through the process of their probation, they've complied with all of their court case, and they fulfill their probationary terms, whatever, that they'll then be able to vote again. If, number one, is that true? Is that an actual fact? Number two, if that is the case, what is the process that those individuals need to go through?
Well, first of all, let me assure you that it is the case. If a person is convicted of a felony and completes his sentence, is no longer under supervision of any kind, he is eligible to register to vote. At that point, he can go register to vote just like anybody else.
Okay, so I guess if that's a separate process, I'm assuming, as far as providing proof at the point of registration that his felony conviction is no longer impeding him or her from voting. That's something that we would not get involved in. In other words, that's just a registration process. So it'd almost be like as an election judge, we're blind to that. They'll just. But I guess I'm concerned about someone saying, I just finished my probationary requirements last year. I registered to vote, and they told me everything was good, and now you're not finding me on the rolls, and this is the precinct I'm supposed to be voting in. What do I do now? And so as an election judge.
That would be an appropriate time to call our voter registration department at 713-274-9922 to inquire about the status of that voter. It may be an issue of timing. If at the time somebody is registering to vote, they are still serving a felony sentence, we will not register that person. However, if they've recently completed a felony sentence and have just registered to vote, we will register them. But keep in mind that, like every other voter, their registration is only effective 30 days after the date they've applied. So call our office in that situation, and we can tell you what the status is, whether they are active or whether they have been canceled as a result of a felony.
Now, if somebody files an application for registration to vote, if they have in fact been a felon and completed their sentence, it's not up to them to provide any proof that they've completed their sentence. Now, when they check, the records that the voter registrar determines may find that there's a felony conviction and may question the registration on that basis. But a person who has, in fact, completed it should be allowed to go through the registration process, be registered, and be on the roll. If they're not on the roll, the process that you're to go through is the same as anybody else that's not on the roll. Check with the voter registration office to see what the status of that registration application is.
Okay.
Is that good enough?
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that's not the same, of course, as being a candidate for public office. Just because you finished your time on probation, we've got some good examples on the ballot this time that having been a convicted felon doesn't liberate you to run for office. Separate issue. All right. That's an inside baseball joke for all those around. Anyway, we've got just a few minutes left. For anybody out there, press 0 if you've got a question, because we're getting close to the last call time. Vince, you got anything more for people to say? Because we've just a few minutes left.
Please, anybody with questions, this is Vince Ryan, give a call in. Again, sitting around the table are people who can answer virtually any of the questions you may have about the process. And again, I think everybody here at the table, along with all the people at Harris County, want to have a good, fair election, allowing everybody who's eligible to vote, and anything we can do, I think I speak for the other elected officials and appointed people sitting around the table, that's what we're all about, is a good, fair election and encouraging people to come vote, picking their choices. Stan?
If you've not had your election law training yet, make sure you go. Get signed up, harrispost.com. Once again, has everything about elections that our voters need. The location of the 41 early voting locations, They can find their personal ballot. They can find their polling location for Election Day. Of course, you can find the training. PowerPoints are up there, but please, participate in the training. You can never know enough about elections because we're here to serve the voters of Harris County.
Stan, why don't you explain a little bit about the early vote process through any one of those 41 locations?
Well, of course, the voter can vote anywhere at any of those 41 locations if they're a registered voter in Harris County. And that's the most convenient thing, push your voters to vote early because it is the most simplest one. We actually have a new location this election. We're 41 now. When I came into office, we had 37. And so we'll continue to grow as our population grows across Harris County. But it's the simplest way to vote. Vote early and bring your photo ID.
All right. Sonia, anything else?
No, we just look forward to seeing you at training.
Okay. And JR?
Thank you for your service. Just a few reminders. Please call our office if you have any questions as to the status of a voter. And keep in mind that we have all of our branches open from the start of early voting all the way until 6 days after the election for any voters who have voted provisionally because of a lack of valid ID, for them to come in and show proper ID or qualify for an exemption. Thank you.
Before we wrap up here, we've got Barbara Madera from precinct number 674, who may be our last call. Is it still possible to inquire about ballots by mail at this time? Go ahead, Barbara. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm just wondering, I know especially for some of our older voters who may not have that required photo ID, is it possible for them to get a ballot by mail at this point?
Perfect question, because Friday, the 24th, is the deadline for my office to receive the application for a ballot by mail. And the application can be found at harrisvotes.com. There's a link right off the front page. And but we must have received in my office by close of business that day that application on Friday the 24th. And within 24 hours we'll send their ballot out to the voter.
And then they have to get the ballot back to you by?
We must have it in our office by 7 p.m. on Election Day. We'll make a run to the post office at 7 p.m. to get every possible ballot. But if it's not received at the post office by 7 p.m., then it won't be counted. So they need to move quickly. We'll move quickly to getting their ballot to them, but then they need to put it in the mail immediately to get it back to us.
That would be a good opportunity then for our older voters, disabled, and those who will be out of the county between now and Election Day. Correct?
You got it.
That's why it's there. Thank you very much. That's a very good
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, it's still time for press zero if you've got it, but we're going to be wrapping up here in just a few seconds. Doug, have you got anything else for him?
Yes. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that whatever questions you may have after the end of this call, feel free to call me at my office. That number is 713-274-5163, or call my cell phone, 281-935-1904. And I will do my best to try to answer whatever questions you have pertaining to the legal requirements of conducting the election.
And that application for a ballot by mail can be received by my office through the regular mail, but like I said, it must be in my office, or it can be faxed to my office, and that information is on the application, or a certified courier can deliver it to my office by Friday, the 24th, close of business. But it cannot be hand-delivered by the voter, believe it or not. So it has to be a courier, by fax, or received in my office through the regular postal mail.
Okay, Stan, we got a call in just now, and they asked, because they'd come in late on the line, if you would go through the mail ballot just one more time, if you would, just
okay.
From the top.
All right. Any ballot that's put in the mail that doesn't have sufficient postage, that does not have any postage at all, the post office is required by law to deliver it to my office. It's in their standard operating procedures. What happened was the post office was not following the law. They were not properly delivering it. That was really the core of the issue. Now, secondly, if insufficient postage is on the ballot, my office has an open account with the post office that they are supposed to bill. Here again, they wasn't even doing that. So I think we've had some changeover at the particular post office personnel that were not following procedures, and so therefore any ballot now, we've had phone calls, we've been in person with the postal system, and they've assured us that they are delivering every ballot now regardless of postage.
Good. And still between now and Friday the 24th, send in your request to Stan Stanart because you can vote by mail, and it's really important for disabled people, elderly people, people who are going to be out of town.
And remember, it's a two-step process. You send in the application for a ballot, then they'll send you a ballot, then you have to fill out the ballot and send in the ballot. The application is due by the 24th of October. The ballot is due by November 4th, Election Day.
All right, Vince, would you do our wrap-up?
Well, just simply, we appreciate those who are participating today, and I can assure you that everybody here at Harris County is interested in having a good, fair election in any way that we can help. The Harris County Attorney's Office, the county clerk, and I'll let him speak for himself here in a second, or the tax assessor collector, voter registrar's office. Everybody is interested in making sure that we have a good, fair election. Stan, would you like to wrap up?
Yes. As your chief election officer of the county, I really appreciate the job that you do. As you can see, this is a big team effort. We work great with the county attorney's office, with the voter registrar's office, and to make an election successful. But like I said, you're the face of elections on Harris County. You're the people that the voters see. So I want to thank you for what you do, and keep pushing people to harrisvotes.com. I think it really helps our voters the most because it has the information they need to be a successful voter on Election Day. Thank you so much.
And just for a reminder for all those who want to hear all this again, www.harriscountyattorney.net. Everything that we've said here is going to be online, and you can hear it all again. And this is Terry O'Rourke, Special Assistant for Vince Ryan, signing off. Thank you.